part of their team is this 19-year-old guy who goes by the moniker Big Balls. Big Balls, Big Balls, CNN on YouTube. Big Balls is at it again.
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
Everybody, welcome back to season 2 of the Zillennial Money podcast. Officially, this is the restart of the show. So we got a full house tonight. All our usual guests are here, and I'm so excited to get the show back on the road. I said we would stop doing intros because it's season 2, and there's probably some returning viewers and everyone who, like a lot of people who know us already, but just for maybe the first episode of season 2, we'll still do the intros one last time, and then we won't do the intros from next episode forward.
My name is Dominic, and please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and let's go.
Hey guys, Tristan here. We've got a great show lined up for you, as always, and pass it off to Sunil for his intro.
Happy new season, and we got a great show, and let's get started.
Yes, and for those people who don't know me, my name is Andy, the world's greatest podcast host, and we also have a full docket. So let's get the show on the road. Season 2 officially starts. So before we jump into today's docket, actually, there's a little bit of sad news that I just want to get out of the way before we get started. So I'm not sure if you guys know who ChargeStack is. Dr. Lewis is his name. And he's one of the biggest analysts in the Bitcoin mining space. And I believe I've used a lot of his research, and I've shared a lot of his research on this show before when we talk about Bitcoin miners and stuff. So unfortunately, I think this was like 1 or 2 weeks ago, he passed away due to a heart attack. This is quite shocking news for everyone who's been in the Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining community. We all really appreciate his research and his contributions, and just generally like the vibes, good vibes that he was sending the entire Bitcoin space. So it was really sad for me to hear that he passed away. But you know, such is life. Life can come at you fast. So I just wanted to give my condolences, just to dedicate this portion of the show to recognize his contributions to the Bitcoin mining space. And hopefully, you know, he has set us up for some great things to happen in the Bitcoin mining industry. And for those people who hold Bitcoin mining stocks, we will have to carry on the mission in his honor from here on out. So rest in peace, ChargeStack, Dr. Lewis. So anyways, with that news out of the way, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of today's actual episode. And this episode, I think, you know, I want to dedicate probably most of this episode to talking about some politics related news, because while we were away during the holiday break, a lot of things happened, right? So obviously we had the Trump inauguration, and then there's a lot of political stuff going on in Canada too. So that's kind of going to be the main theme of tonight's show. So let's start off in the United States, our friendly, dear old neighbors down south, friendly in quotes, with the DOGE and the new Department of Government Efficiency. I'm not talking about the Doge coin, but the actual official government organization headed by Elon Musk, who is trying to, reduce government waste and all this stuff. Well, Doge is firing on all cylinders, and that word firing I use with pun intended, because they're going after a lot of these organizations and firing a lot of government employees, and ruffled a lot of feathers during the process, right? So the latest news, or the biggest news so far, is that they're going after this organization called USAID, I think it stands for the United States Agency for International Development, or some people call it USAID because that's what it spells. And the idea of USAID was just to, it's an organization that is supposed to be kind of furthering American interests overseas. It's a foreign aid organization, right? So they spend money in all these different countries all over the world to further American values. And this was something that was established by executive order by John F. Kennedy back in the 60s. But the reason why DOGE has been going after USAID is because it's been recently revealed, and this has been going on for a long time, but just revealed by DOGE's investigations, that USAID funded a lot of things that were, let's just say, questionable. So the idea of DOGE is to go after fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's kind of the starting point at which DOGE is trying to crack down upon that. And according to Elon and according to people, Trump himself and people in the Trump administration, USAID is being described as a slush fund that is funding pro-Democrat policies and pro-Democrat programs. At least that's the opinion of the right, I guess you can say. But we can maybe have a debate on how accurate that classification is. But let me just kind of present you some of the facts, right? So first of all, this is a picture of Elon Musk with his son on his back, on his shoulders, in the Oval Office with Trump giving a press conference. So during this press conference, one of the reporters asked him about Elon's claim that $50 million in condoms was sent to Gaza, which apparently turned out to be untrue. But hold on, like the media was like, okay, this is like a gotcha moment. Elon was lying. We got him. The truth was, it was not sent to Gaza, Palestine. It was sent to Mozambique, which has a province called Gaza. So that's where the confusion came from. So like, people are saying that the reporter was like, hey, you incorrectly stated that $50 million worth of condoms was sent to Gaza. It was not actually sent to Gaza. It was sent to Mozambique. And Elon's like, well, like that doesn't make it that much better, right? I forget the exact words that he said, but I don't know. I just thought that was such a funny experience, like funny kind of interaction. This is like, if your wife caught you cheating and then your wife thought that you were cheating on her with her sister, and you're like, no, I didn't cheat on you with your sister. I actually cheated on you with your cousin. Like, okay, like that doesn't make it that much better, right? So it's like, hey, like this, we shouldn't be sending $50 million worth of condom to Mozambique either, is Elon's kind of response to that, right? I think the exact words were, that's a lot of condoms. And like, we probably shouldn't send it. Like we probably shouldn't send that amount of condoms anywhere. I don't know. This is kind of just one example. And Mario Nawfal, who's one of the journalists, one of the biggest journalists on X, he posted this kind of, just list of other things that DOGE has uncovered about USAID. So apart from the $50 million for condoms for Mozambique, there was $1.5 million spent on Kenyan soap opera to promote HIV/AIDS awareness and a whole slew of other social issues. $27 million spent for a Moroccan pottery class to teach, or a series of Moroccan pottery classes. I don't know if that makes it better if it's more than one pottery class, but to teach artists design skills and how to sell their work globally. $20 million spent on Pakistan's Sesame Street for a localized version of the show to promote education, cultural awareness among kids. So, a lot of these things, you can say that they're nice things to do, but I would say that if you were to really present these ideas to the American taxpayer and told them that we're going to spend your tax money on this kind of stuff, I would imagine that the vast majority of American taxpayers would not be okay with this kind of spending, right? Especially because America, it's not like America doesn't have problems domestically. There are a lot of problems domestically. Maybe it's probably the vast majority opinion that if you have extra money, if you have enough money to be sending overseas to pottery classes and stuff like that, maybe there's other places where the money could be better spent. Or maybe you just don't collect that money in the first place. Maybe give people a tax cut. So anyways, that's another example. And then another one that I kind of commented on, so I tweeted about this, and it's a post by the BBC, so the British Broadcasting Corporation, which is, British, not American. So the BBC was getting a measurable amount of their income, which they said it amounted to about 8% of their income in 2023 to 24, which came from organizations like USAID. And basically, we have to question why a foreign to the Americans, right? Because it's British, a foreign media corporation is getting funding from the US government. And we know that the BBC leans left. So it's like, the whole argument that USAID is a pro-Democrat slush fund, I think this is kind of where it comes from. And this is what I said about it, right? So let me get this straight. The BBC is a free press, which is what they claimed in their statement, but a measurable amount of their income comes from a foreign government who wants nothing in exchange for their money, right? It's like totally zero influence on the types of stories after they contribute 8% of your income. So this is kind of what the US government is using to justify funding all these organizations through USAID. And I just think that, this stuff is being uncovered, and a lot of people are probably not okay with this, although I can't speak for other people, and I'm not even American, but we'll have a talk about this later. So besides the USAID stuff, DOGE is gonna go after a lot of other agencies as well. So one of the biggest other agency, the Pentagon, is the next one that DOGE is trying to go after. And then for DOGE, they've hired a lot of help from, they have a whole team. And then part of their team is this 19-year-old guy who goes by the moniker Big Balls. And this is another like super funny thing where they're kind of forcing CNN to cover Big Balls when like you have all these like CNN anchors that are like super mad about this guy named Big Balls just going in and wrecking things and like firing staff and all that stuff. And I'm not gonna like play clips for copyright reasons, but you can look them up. Just like type in like Big Balls CNN on YouTube, and then you'll have like anchors just like repeating like in a really mad voice, like Big Balls is at it again. But anyways, I just thought it was kind of funny. And it's also kind of funny how they're going after this guy for being 19 years old to like make this connection that, oh, it's like a bunch of kids that are like running things that don't know what they're doing. But the Democrats are supposed to be the party of the youth, right? It's just not that youth if you're acting against democratic interests. But anyways, I thought I shared this post from David Sachs, who's the crypto and AI czar from the Trump administration. And he posted this really funny joke. Hey, sir, the Pentagon has failed another audit. And it was like, send in Big Balls at this time. So anyways, that's all I had for Doge. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of opinions on how Doge is doing and whether you like or dislike what Doge is doing. What do you think about the whole USAID thing and what's been uncovered? Do you think that, it's like a Democrat slush fund, or is that too heavy of an accusation? Because, Democrats would say it's not just left-leaning causes, like they're doing a lot of charity as well, but is it really worth it? Is something that we have to question, right? Is it fraud, waste, and abuse, right? Should USAID be shut down, and should Elon Musk's Doge be given this type of authority to like go in and try to fix things, or is Doge going too far? So a lot of questions here, so I'm happy to hear what you guys think about this situation.
So my opinions on the whole Doge situation are completely hilarious. It seems like Elon's with common sense cracking down on everything that's an issue. I think I was watching a clip online about only 10,000 workers are allowed to retire in a month's time or something because files are stored in like a mine, and it's crazy. And then it's like straight from the 1950s or something like that. And when I was just reading and watching this clip, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like only 10,000 people can retire a month just because of these really old and outdated systems. So finally, someone's like trying to figure this out and trying to fix these problems. And it seems like Elon's doing a really good job. And I saw a few clips too of the Donald Trump and Elon interview with this kid. It was pretty funny. Like Elon was chatting, and then this kid was like, and then like, hey, stop. And then they had to resume. I thought that was pretty jokes as well. I thought it was pretty funny. And then I think one thing really stuck out for me in that speech. He was just saying two things need to be done. It's care and competence. And then that really stood out to me. I was like, wow, is that all it takes for everything to be fixed and stuff? And yeah, like you guys are saying, and I've been saying too, like it seems like more and more things are coming out, and it just seems like this Doge is doing really well for the government of the United States of America. I wish we actually had this in Canada. That'd be really fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of other places, I see comments on like, oh, I wish the UK had this. I wish Australia had this. So overall, I think it's like a really good thing for the United States government. And ooh, yeah, keep it up. Go. And on a side note, in terms of the USAID, I think some of the things that they've been doing are quite ridiculous and quite questionable. And I think we can all put two and two together. Elon and his team should probably have more power or authority over this, because it seems like they make the common sense choice over, I don't know, let's see, 1.5 million on Kenyan soap operas to promote HIV and AIDS. Yeah. Although that's very important, you could probably knock down that price. But hey, these are our opinions, so it is what it is.
Yeah. What would big balls do is the question.
He would crack his balls down deep. I don't know. Audit the heck out of this.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else want to chime in here?
I think that I have heard a lot of commentary from both sides on the whole Doge factor. And I will say that it does seem that a lot of power has been given to Elon to enact a lot of change. And the people didn't elect Elon, so it does feel like it is a lot of power being handed to a billionaire that a lot of people don't particularly like, who may have voted for Donald Trump but didn't vote for Elon. And yes, I'm aware that Elon was referenced in Donald Trump's campaign. But again, I'm just saying I could see people being displeased about that, given that this is an unelected individual. And on that regard, I think that a lot of the, well, maybe not a lot, but several of the examples given, particularly like the condom one, for example, I feel like in terms of providing aid to a country, that's a pretty bog standard thing in terms of aid wise. People are going to do it, and having them do it with protection so that there is not kids that they can't handle, and that kind of thing. Like, as from a aid perspective, I feel like this is something where to reduce the HIV, etc., that was being spread. Like, I think that that's a more understandable usage of aid, given that the purpose of aid is to assist another country. Now, again, whether or not you can have an argument about whether or not the U.S. should have been providing aid in the first place, but that's kind of like a different conversation. But from my perspective, like, if they're going to be providing aid, I don't think that for example, the condom one is one where it's like, I don't think that's one where we necessarily need to attack the USAID to the same extent. Some of the pottery classes, etc., I can kind of see why that wouldn't be as useful. But like, yeah. And it's so again, it's like, do you what do you like from an America first perspective? This is probably good cuts because, you know, any degree of foreign aid is money that is being spent outside of the US, that is being spent, you know, the government is sending to another country. If you're of the opinion that America needs to be the priority, then why are we wasting money on wasting, but, you know, in their perspective, why, like, especially if you're someone who is, you know, having a hard time, you're having a bad time, like, and then you find out the government is sending $50 million in condoms to another country, and you're homeless or you're living paycheck to paycheck. It's like really hard to go there and be like, I could have used some of that $50 million. So I think from a perspective of like maintaining American hegemony, like over the other countries, maybe cutting the aid and such will be worse in the long run. But from a benefiting America right now in America, maybe this is something that, you know, more people will be getting alongside with. So again, I don't really have all the ins and outs on everything that USAID. I have heard some discussions about how there was medical supplies and stuff that was supposed to be shipped out to other countries that's now just gonna sit and waste because of how quickly they cut stuff. So maybe there's some of that where they might be moving a little bit too quickly to cut stuff without kind of tying up tying the bow at the end, so that, you know, things aren't getting wasted. But I mean, if America is the one who is giving the aid to other countries, America also has the right to stop giving aid to other countries. So I don't think that this is something we need to. Well, I don't think that the Americans, and, you know, by extension DOGE, are at fault for canceling this to a certain, like, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, he who giveth can also taketh away, right? Like, there's no requirement for the US to give this aid in the first place. So if they want to stop tomorrow, you know, you could be angry, you could be sad, but they did not have to give it in the first place. So maybe, yeah, it's just, that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, I think that if I was an American, I might be more pro the DOGE, because I'd be like, hey, money at home, especially if I wasn't doing as well. Whereas if you're someone who I think is doing relatively well, I could see you being who cares about other countries more. I could see someone being more like, we're stopping all of these aid to these people. You know, $1 sent to a different country is worth, you know, like 10 times as much than it is here. You know, if you have your basic needs already met, it's a lot easier to look out and try and help other people. But I think that they're kind of coming in and doing a America needs to be saved, so we're just gonna cut. And again, yeah, from an America's perspective, this is probably going to be beneficial for people within America, but from a global perception and perspective, there will potentially be, you know, more people negatively affected than positively affected. So that's kind of my take on it all.
To start off, the whole like press conference was hilarious. It was just kind of like a massive troll, and just the like Elon's style mixed with Trump is just almost the perfect match. Like, who would have thought? And it's just kind of funny because like the media and the Democrats are operating on continual Trump derangement syndrome since 2016, and they've basically been operating on Elon derangement syndrome since around 2020. So now they've kind of met together, and they're like, there's like a Megazord derangement syndrome or whatever you want to call it, but it's like, it's just the perfect storm. And I think it reminds me a lot of like what happened with how the media covered like the Twitter buyout and like all the like embellishment and drama, and I think a lot of the things that the Democrats and media are complaining about are still embellished. Even if I agree with Tristan that there's obviously going to be programs that USAID funds that are good for the world, but like I think a lot of it's wasteful. I think a lot of it's actually problematic too. So there's like, you could talk about this subject matter for hours, but I think that Trump had a strong mandate. I think that the entire cabinet and all the advisors are actually unelected. I do agree they have to go through congressional hearings, but like it is pretty common that like presidents are able to appoint advisors and czars to do things like this. So I don't actually think it's that unprecedented, this program. Like I think it should, in theory, be bipartisan. So it's actually just disappointing that you can't find any Democrat that has anything to say about what should be cut from government. They just kind of run off of a philosophy that we should reform government by making it bigger. So that's kind of all we're getting from the Democrats. So I just don't think they're really being good faith actors here. Even if from time to time people have good points about programs that shouldn't be cut, I still don't really think the Democrats are operating in good faith for the most part. I think it's one of the important angles here is to talk about is that like a lot of like, there is a lot of sensationalism happening here, which, the media tends to be sensationalistic against Trump and Elon, and now they're being sensationalistic and using words like fraud and illegal. I don't necessarily think that most of the things that have been covered here are necessarily fraud in that they're illegal, but they are fraudulent in that most people probably were unaware that governments were funding like dramas about HIV and funding. I mean, everybody kind of knew about the condom programs, but like, there's a lot of like nonsensical things that kind of like, do these things even move the needle? Like, that's the other thing when you're talking about these like small government programs, like, do they move the needle? I don't think that most of them do. I think most of them are pretty silly. There's also like another point that the Democrats like substantially raised U.S. aid under Biden, and like this is also often seen by many people as influence peddling. So I think it's important to like cover that angle. There's a lot of other smarter people on the internet that are covering this subject, so I recommend people look into that. But I mean, I think the important angle that I want to focus on is that it does create a lot of institutional corruption that's like not necessarily illegal, but like things that people who work in things that politicians are able to kind of set up these circular economies for themselves in their family networks. Like a lot of family networks tied to politicians run charities, and some of these charities showed up in these USAID funding programs. So like politicians are able to get their kids and jobs, six-figure jobs. They're able to get money through these programs. And then people always wonder, how do these politicians who make $200,000 a year have $400 million net worths, or maybe $100 million net worths, whatever. This kind of explains a lot of that circular economy happens, because politicians can really like help their family network substantially through these kinds of things. So, and I think the Democrats did get caught doing a lot of it. It is bipartisan. What USAID is being used maliciously by both parties, but it is bipartisan. But the Democrats got caught, and the Democrats decided to like defend it, while the Republicans are being a little bit more like careful about it. So I think that that's kind of an important point of view here. But the other thing I wanted to say is that like a lot of people on the left, and I've been one of these people, I've been this person too, kind of claim that like these small programs don't really move the needle on like budget cuts and that kind of stuff. And like, what's fun cutting $11 million? How's that going to change anything? But these things do add up. It's also important to like that there's been a lot of allegations that USAID is tied to a lot of programs that are actually running out of the Department of Defense, the CIA, and the State Department. This kind of influence peddling where you can use these programs to help opposition that are favored by the United States, or you could use these programs to just intervene in these countries in ways that are often like not liked by those countries. Like there has been a lot of instances where countries have like told Western democracies, Western governments to stay out of their business and stop with the foreign aid. Like India has actually like done their hard. Like that's just one example. But Modi like actually worked hard to ban a lot of foreign aid out of India, and they actually had a lot of better social outcomes when the foreign aid actually left their country. So even the well-intentioned stuff can actually cause a lot of damage, and like a $10 million program here or there can cause a lot of damage depending on what country you're talking about. That could be a really big budget for a lot of places. And when you have this giant government of the United States that are able to kind of like push their weight around, that does have a huge impact on the world. So I think that the sloppiness of these programs, but also some of the programs being malicious, are actually like used to help, you know, destabilize governments. And I don't think that should be ignored, because USAID there's been a lot of allegations that USAID engages in that kind of activity, especially the stuff that's very directly related, directly funded by the US government. And I think the last thing is that there is a problem, I would say, like in the Western world, that we've allocated a lot of our human capital towards like nonprofits and government, and we have a hard time hiring people in like, I don't know, like the services industry and the blue collar industry, because we actually have a lot of experts in our society. So I think when you have these giant government budgets constantly funneling money to these things, that actually has a very damaging distortionary effect to our labor economy, where we do have a lot of, I would say, not so useful experts who get paid good salaries. And I think that misallocation of human capital actually has a very negative effect on our home economies too, which is, I would say, a point that goes towards the America First sentiment that came out of this story.
I mean, you took almost all my words out of my mouth already, so I won't add too much on it. But yeah, I guess one thing I will mention, and then we can move on to the next story, is I just want to maybe add to my previous opinion of my disappointment in the Democratic Party. And what I mean by this is that the way that they reacted, I think, Zillennial, you touched upon this as well earlier, the way that they're reacting to DOGE trying to, you know, audit and go after USAID, the way that the Dems are kind of pushing back, it's just so disappointing. And it just kind of underscores the point that I don't think that this is going to be a political party that's going to be taken seriously for a very long time going forward. And if they continue down this path, and I'm saying this as like a former leftist who got, I guess you could say, disillusioned by a lot of the left-leaning, you know, movements in both the US and Canada, or the West in general, I just think that they're on kind of a wrong path, right? So history is not going to remember the Democrats kindly if they continue pushing back against someone who's auditing and trying to catch fraud, waste, and abuse. Because if you ask just regular people, and not like, you know, diehard brainwashed party supporters, and I recognize that there's those types of people on both sides, but talking about the Democrats in particular, if they're trying to present this argument that we shouldn't be going after agencies who waste money and who may have conducted fraudulent activity, that's not a winning position in any society, right? Like, because who is the general, like 95% of people are not going to be for waste, fraud, and abuse. And I just think that the way that the Democrats have been reacting, it can be boiled down to 3 stages, right? So stage 1 is there is no fraud, waste, and abuse, which is, we're past that stage now because it's been clearly proven false. There is fraud, there is waste, and there is abuse in these agencies like USAID and other stuff that DOGE has uncovered. Number 2 is, okay, maybe there is some waste, fraud, and abuse, but USAID was also doing some other stuff that were legitimate. So, you know, we should not go after this like waste, fraud, and abuse because the good that they're doing cancels out the bad that they're doing. And also Elon Musk is an a-hole for going after us, for going after causes that we like, because, and also he's unelected, which again, by the way, like a lot of people are unelected. And by the way, Elon doesn't have the direct authority to do anything. So whatever he does still needs to be approved by either Trump, or I think they place USAID under Marco Rubio, who was confirmed by the Senate in a unanimous bipartisan vote. So this whole argument that Elon shouldn't be doing all this because he's unelected, first of all, there's a lot of people who have a lot of power in Western society, in both US, Canada, whatever, Western democracies, that are not elected, who have a lot of power already, right? So if you just take the United States, look at the Fed, right? Like the Fed has enormous power, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And yet the Fed chairman is not elected by the people. He's appointed, right? Jay Powell. So again, like I think that they've completely overblown this Elon is unelected kind of argument, and long term it might appeal to some people, but I don't think it's going to appeal to a vast majority of people. So that's a losing position. But we're at stage 2, right, where they're saying like, okay, sure, you've maybe uncovered a lot of this fraud, waste, and abuse, but there's also a lot of good things. So let's not shut down USAID. And then the third stage, which I predict we're not like fully there yet, but we're maybe at like late stage, stage 2, or maybe early stage 3. Stage 3 is, fraud is actually good. Like, like if they get desperate enough, that's what I predict that they're gonna go. It's like they go from there is no fraud, waste, and abuse to there might be some, but there's also a lot of good. To number 3, actually fraud, waste, and abuse is good. Like that's just my prediction. I don't know. I'm super biased on this. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments, which I am not going to read. So let's move on to the next story if you guys don't have anything else to add. So the next story is kind of actually somewhat related to what we've been talking about. So maybe this is like just part 2 of the same story. But I just wanted to get what you guys thought, what you guys' opinions are on the whole Trump presidency so far. So I know it's been very controversial, a lot of the things he's done, and he's making a lot of drastic moves and drastic changes. So it's been a super volatile, not even a month. It feels like he's been president for a year already, but it's not even been a month. So I just wanted to get what you guys' opinions are on how he's doing. In your opinion, what has he done that you like? What has he done that you don't like? And I would recommend you guys try to pick a little bit of both, right? Like, don't just say like I hate everything he's done, and don't just say I like everything he's done. I'm sure there's stuff from both sides that you can choose from. But let me just kind of pull out some posts on what I think he's doing. Obviously, I have a lot of bias on this topic, and I'm gonna maybe be more on the pro-Trump side, but let's see, right? So Geiger Capital, who made this brilliant post, in my opinion, kind of underscores a lot of the things that I think that Trump is doing well. And people are maybe like misunderstanding him or not seeing the vision, in my opinion. But let me read this post for you. So Geiger Capital says, let's make something clear. Whether you support Trump or not, the people who thinks he's acting in an unprecedented ways by bullying other countries have zero understanding of basic American history. All of the people now feigning outrage against every consensus good president that we have ever had. They would have protested every great move America's ever made. You're against acquiring Greenland. You probably would have been against buying Alaska from Russia or the Louisiana Territory from France. You're against our president making some threats to Central American countries. Colombia wouldn't let us build a canal at first, so Roosevelt, I think this was Teddy Roosevelt, sent down new battleships to take back the Panamanian independence, who let us build a canal that we wanted. Today's Democratic Party says they love Teddy Roosevelt, but they would be screaming that he is an out-of-control madman if he was in office today. America has always been the bully. We've leveraged our economic and military power for our own benefit. The reality is Americans today and our more recent presidents have simply become softer. Yeah, and I would say I would agree with everything that Geiger said here, but maybe my opinion is not shared by everyone in this room right now, but that's just my and Geiger's opinion. And let me kind of maybe underscore some of the good things for Bitcoin and crypto specifically, since we're all Bitcoin fans here. So, you know, people are complaining that Trump got inaugurated, but Bitcoin's price has gone nowhere since he took office. So, you know, what has he really done for Bitcoin? The price hasn't gone up. And I know like the price is probably the most important thing that a lot of people care about the most. But let me just kind of speak on the fundamentals, the improving fundamentals that have taken place since Trump took office. And I believe that eventually all of these things will have a positive impact on price, maybe not immediately, but it will down the line. So what has he done for Bitcoin and crypto since taking office? So let me just name a few. So he established a crypto committee on providing clear crypto guidelines. He replaced Gary Gensler at the SEC with a pro-crypto new head, appointed David Sachs as the crypto czar, repealed SAB 121, which prevented banks from custodying crypto. So that was a law that just basically barred banks from custodying crypto for clients, and then that's gone. He pardoned Ross Ulbricht. He indicated clearly that he will not sell any of the BTC that is currently being held at the FBI, at the U.S. Marshals, and you know, the U.S. Kind of law enforcement agencies, which is where they're holding the Bitcoin now. And I believe that that's around 200,000 BTC at the moment. So he's indicated clearly that he will not sell it. He appointed a pro-crypto or pro-Bitcoin Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who owns, I think I read somewhere that he owns about $500,000 worth of Bitcoin ETFs in his own personal portfolio. And he launched Trump meme coin, which I know is a controversial thing, but at the very least, even if you don't like the fact that he did this, this is an indication that he will not be hostile to crypto if he's even involved in creating a meme coin himself, right? So he's not going to be cracking down on the crypto industry the same way that the Biden administration did. And he also announced a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, which is not directly related to Bitcoin per se, but I would be surprised that if there was a 0% allocation to Bitcoin ETFs in this thing. So for those of you who don't know what a sovereign wealth fund is, it's just basically like a hedge fund, but controlled by the government and invest on the government's behalf. So, you know, Saudi Arabia has one of the world's largest, and Norway actually has the world's largest right now. They have a lot of offshore oil in Norway, where they use the oil money to create the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. And I think it's about like $2 trillion of assets under management. Is huge. And if Trump, you know, knowing Trump, he might want to try to beat that. So, you know, if he makes a $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund and he puts 5% of that into Bitcoin, you know, that's going to be a lot of capital inflow, right? I'm not saying that he necessarily will do that, but that's a possibility, right? So yeah, again, I am disappointed that the price did not immediately go up after he was inaugurated, but there could be a lot of reasons for that. And you know, we shouldn't, if it had gone up, we shouldn't attribute all the positive energy to Trump, because like maybe he doesn't have that much influence. So on the same kind of flip side of the coin, you probably shouldn't blame Trump too hard that the price is not going up yet, because it's only been a few weeks since he came into office. So I posted this joke, which unfortunately a lot of people actually do this in real life, but I posted this joke on Twitter or on X on Inauguration Day, And I highly recommend anyone who, especially people who are, left-leaning pro-Democrat, please don't be this guy in real life, okay? So on Inauguration Day, it's like, Trump supporters were saying that, oh, once he comes back, he'll fix everything, and you'll see, like, he's gonna get inaugurated soon. And then the Democrats are like, okay, Trump was inaugurated at 12 noon. It is now 12:01 p.m. Why are things not fixed? Explain, right? Like, don't be this guy. Come on, just knock it off, okay? So, anyways, that's mostly what I had to say about what I think Trump is doing so far, and we can talk about things that he's done that I don't like a little bit later, because there are things, admittedly, that he's done that I don't like as well. But it's more positive than negative in my opinion. But I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say and what you guys' opinions are on this.
Sure, I'll take a crack at it. I think on the plus side, as the comedic relief here, I think I was watching a clip online, and it was something about Trump unbanning plastic straws in the United States of America, because it was just funny, because like, who likes paper straws? I completely agree with that. And him like openly announcing that and then wanting to have plastic straws back was completely funny for me, and it's so true. Like, when I go to McDonald's, whether it be like Burger King or etc., Wendy's, like, I'd prefer the plastic straw. Like, the paper straw does not hit as well. So I do agree on that. But in terms of disagreements, because we do need to indicate that too as well, I think because of everything being in tariff territory, it's creating kind of a divide between Canada and the United States. And to specify, there's viral clips online indicating, oh, we need to shop Canadian, we need to buy products of Canada or anything that's made in Canada. And it's just like something else that we need to think about, and it's super annoying and complicated. I mean, it can be easy, but like, why should we go through this trouble? It's just because of the collision that's being created between the US and Canada. So I'm not really a huge fan of that. And because of the tariff situation, I think people are actually canceling their plans to go to the United States on vacation. Like, a lot of Ontarians or Quebec's people, they're probably not going to make that trip to Florida just because of everything that's going on. And less people from Vancouver are going to go to Seattle just because of the situation too. I think I was watching something on Global TV, or if it was City TV, I wasn't sure, about the duty-free shops in between Vancouver and Seattle being a lot less busy, as much as like 80%, just because of the current situation that's happening right now in tariffs. I know, like, it's being delayed till the end of the month. Like, we have that at least, but I just don't like how it's just creating such a divide. And he keeps instilling like Canada's going to be the 51st state of America. I mean, for some that's good, some it's bad, but I think just saying that's a bit bold. So I can disagree on that. And otherwise, I just like how he's getting things done. It's quite interesting, but it isn't like perfect, right? And I guess we can all kind of agree on that. So these are my thoughts.
Yeah, with regards to the plastic straws thing, I think my prediction is that historians will look upon that very moment as the beginning of the golden age and not the actual inauguration. And like that's like when golden age was confirmed. But yeah, anyways, someone else.
Yeah, I think that Trump is a character. I think he has been doing a lot of stuff that is. He's basically just been an agent of chaos this whole time, I would say. He's been doing a lot of things that are rocking the boat. And I must confess, I don't like the boat being rocked. I don't like it, whether it's a good idea, whether it's a bad idea. I don't want my boat to be rocked. I just want a nice, clean Bitcoin cycle that flows straight from, where we're at right now to much higher. I don't need Trump to talk about tariffs and for the market to just be like, everything's on fire, things are terrible. I don't need that right now. I just need him to shut up and let the stock market fly to the moon. Instead, he insists on rocking the boat at every opportunity, it feels like. And as a result, the stock market is extremely volatile. Bitcoin and all of the Bitcoin related assets are extremely volatile. but not in a good way, not in a we'll make lots of money, but in a everything is just not very good in terms of returns. It's just lots of stress, and I just find that like that aspect has been very unenjoyable from my perspective, and I think the way he's acted towards his allies is something that will turn his allies off of him. So, for example, like with the tariffs with Canada, I think it's pretty clear that Canada is more or less aligned with the US pretty much across the board. So the way he's acting like they've been doing us such a favor with our trade deals all these years, when in reality we've been giving them oil for the discount for basically forever. I think it's pretty rich. I would say that currently we have a reasonably balanced trade deal going on with the US for the most part. The only thing that's really tipping us over in terms of like the trade deficit is purely our oil, which is like 30% of our export to them. Like, okay, you do not want the oil, you know, we could just stop doing that and we'll have that nice balanced trade that he seems to want. So I just I think that's been unfortunate, the way that he's acted. I do think that it's been just posturing to get us to do whatever he wants, rather than an actual intention to put in tariffs. But, you know, time will tell on whether or not that is actually the case. I think that if he does put in tariffs, though, that will be extremely detrimental to both the US economy and the Canadian economy. I think this is something that will be a major problem for the West economies in general. Because again, the US will be paying for those tariffs. So whether or not you like it, you will be paying to have that more expensive oil now from Canada. You'll be paying for more expensive Canadian exports. And not all of these things have an immediate American alternative to swap to that would be cheaper. So I think that those kind of aspects where he's really kind of throwing uncertainty into the markets has not been very ideal. What he's doing with DOGE, I could see how it's good for the US. I'm not American, so as far as I'm concerned, it's completely whatever. I don't care. Like in terms of like I am from that may be a little bit harsh, but like it's not like the aid is coming to Canada, and it's not like I'm going to benefit from being an American who's now saving on my taxes because a charity got cut. So, I mean, maybe the world's worse off, but I mean, at the end of the day, Canada is going to be in the exact same scenario that Canada was in prior to USAID getting cut. So, from my perspective, it's kind of a null point. I don't really, you know, I could say and sit here and assert how I'm such a good person by saying how like this is terrible, and you know, the charities, the people, all these people are going to die and stuff. And I could go and talk about that, but I really don't think that the average person actually really cares about the what is or isn't happening as a result of the charities losing funding, as harsh as that sounds. So again, I don't think that's necessarily indicative of a good or bad presidency. And with regards to Andy's point on the US being a bully throughout history, yeah, they've been a bully. They don't have to be a bully. I know they have been a bully. I know they can be a bully. They don't have to be a bully. That's kind of where I'm at. I would prefer if they weren't a bully and instead were a friend. But I understand that you know, bullying will put you ahead in some cases. So, you know, and again, I'm not American, so them bullying people is not helpful for me. So whether or not is helpful for the US, it's probably more likely to be detrimental for me as a Canadian than than him not being bullying. So I think from my perspective, and I mean, maybe Andy and some of you other guys are kind of thinking more like from whether or not Trump is doing a good job for America. But I'm really kind of seeing it from like the Canadian perspective, where I'm like, I think this has not been a particularly great result for us as Canadians. And again, a couple pieces on that. The us becoming a state. No one that I've spoken to has been like, wow, we should really become a state. You know what I really wanted to do? Become an American state tomorrow. Like, no, I've yet to meet anyone who is actively like, yes, that's what I want. I've met a few people who have been more like, it wouldn't be all bad, but that's not quite the same as an emphatic, happy remark. And with regards to the crypto piece, I mean, there's been a bunch of stuff that's happening. I don't know when it's actually going to kick in. It hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot of news for no, like it's as Andy, I think you made this expression a lot, whereas like there's a lot of smoke for there to be no fire or something like that. I feel like there's been so much smoke that at this point I'm wondering if someone's got a smoke machine rather than there being a fire. So it's been kind of just rough waiting for this bull run to start. But that's not necessarily Trump's. I know I'm going to blame him a little bit. The tariff timing was very not ideal. So I'll give him some not credit for that. But I mean, I guess as a whole, in my opinion, this has been there's been a lot of there's also just been a lot of, like, I would say, big news points. Like even the plastic straw thing is something where it's like, who cares? Like, I've never gone to sleep thinking about how I need the president of the United States to tell me that I can use a plastic straw over a paper straw. This is just not something that really matters. If they want to say that I can't use a plastic straw, you know, I mean, I'm not really happy about that. But like at the end of the day, it's like all these companies have gone to all the effort to make a supply line for paper straws. Are they going to immediately swap back just because the president said that they should swap back? Like they've built a supply chain for it now. So it doesn't really matter what I think he says on that front. The companies will make the decision at the end of the day, as long as all he's saying is that he's not mandating it one way or the other. But it just feels like news like that is just kind of like it's a complete nothing burger. It's like, this is not something I think is something I needed the president to weigh in on, you know?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to pass it off to Sunil soon, but let me just interject with like a slight counter. So I do believe that the plastic straws thing, it was a Biden directive to actually mandate paper straws. So what he did was, like, he's not forcing everyone to just use plastic straws, but just he signed an executive order that rescinded like the paper straw ban. So it was like, it's the opposite, right? Like it was somebody that wanted to, I don't know to what extent the ban goes, but there was a directive to ban plastic straws in favor of paper straws. And that's what Trump got rid of. And I get what you're saying with like, why does this matter? Like, why does he need to sign an executive order for just like something that's like a non-issue? I tend to disagree with that slightly. Like, I understand that it's a non-issue, but it's like a thing with morale, right? Like, it's something that a lot of people, even left-leaning people, Democrats who are generally a lot more environmentally conscious, even those people are like, yeah, like those plastic straws really suck, and I would prefer the option to have plastic straws if possible, right? So I just think that it's such a great morale booster, and it's like an indication of like his thought process, right? It's like, I'm gonna try to manage the big things, but I'm also not gonna forget about the small things, and keep that in mind. So I don't know if he made a campaign promise at some point. I'm sure he at least mentioned it once or twice before he got elected president, that he was gonna bring back plastic straws. So yeah, I just think you can argue that he was just fulfilling campaign promises to an extent as well, right? So I just think that that's just it's an indication, it's like a signal that he's trying to go in a direction that people wanted him to go, and I think that that's a positive sign.
I just want to say, why did Biden stop us from using plastic straws in the first place? That seems like something else that falls in line in my line of thinking, where it's like, you know, who cares? Why was Biden weighing in on it in the first place? So,
well, from my understanding, there was like a documentary or something that said that the plastic straws get into the oceans and then like they get eaten by turtles, and then they like kill the turtle because like it gets stuck in their digestive tract or whatever. I mean, I'm sure that does happen sometimes, but is it really happening to such a wide scale that it's like wiping out the entire population of like turtles? I don't know, right? And I just think that it's kind of dumb as well, where a lot of companies like those like juice box companies, they have a plastic straw, they have a paper straw, but it's in a plastic like kind of casing, right? Because like it's on the, because when you're drinking a juice box, the straw's on the outside, so to prevent it from getting dirty, they plastic wrap it, and then it's a paper straw, but it's wrapped in plastic, so they're still using plastic. They're just like, they just change the straw to paper, and then the paper, it dissolves, it falls apart, it doesn't work. And yeah, it's just kind of something dumb. And I just think that it was another example of Democrats virtue signaling, right? Like they're doing this because it makes them look environmentally friendly and supportive of anti-climate change, the pro-recycling kind of directives, but it's just, in reality, it doesn't move the needle, and it makes everybody's life just a little bit more inconvenient. And again, I get that it's not a big deal, but it's just from like a symbolic point of view, I think it's very important that Trump did this, just as a signal that he's willing to go in that direction. But yeah, I've talked for a long time. Sunil, it's your turn.
I guess I'll start with the negative. Like, yeah, I understand like Canadians have a lot of hurt feelings. Yeah, ideally, America and Trump would treat their allies a lot better. I guess I do somewhat agree that he's added to some of the market volatility. Personally, I think that markets kind of always at times go through normal liquidity cycles, short-term, like 5-6 week cycles, and we kind of needed a cooling off period. So sometimes markets just look for an excuse for that cooling off period. So they're using this as an excuse, because like a lot of it comes down to the talking heads. What they say is causing the markets to go up and down, and they're usually just making it up on the spot. So I'm not saying that he hasn't contributed to market volatility with the tariff news. Like, it's not good for the markets, but I also just think we needed a cooling off, and we needed a cooling off on Bitcoin and a lot of risk assets. So I think we're going to be back pretty soon. In terms of the good, like, I'm thoroughly entertained. The memes have been excellent, and I think that's been great. I think that's probably my most important point. But I think that from a political point of view, the way he's the theatrics and the memes have like just fed into his base, so his base is very happy. They're very satisfied. So that's good in politics. You got to keep your base happy. In terms of the politics of the opposition, the Democrats just take the bait. Like, they haven't learned anything from 2016. The media just keeps taking the bait, so they just keep playing into Trump's hands. Not only do they've taken the bait, like Canada's taking the bait, Europe's taking the bait, because Trump just tends to ramp it up to 11 every time. And like, he said America's gonna acquire Gaza. He just says crazy things. I think he made that up on the spot. So I mean, the one thing I'll say is that, like, from a Canadian perspective, is don't get too sensitive about it, because he's kind of like, not only is Trump ramping it up to 11 on us, he's ramping it up to 11 on China, he's ramping it up on Europe, and he's also doing it to the U.S. Congress and the United States government. So he's very disruptive. He's like a tornado. I'm one that actually, I guess I'm a little bit opposite to Tristan. I like rocking the boat. So I think that we kind of need to rock the boat in some ways. Now, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on like whether Trump's rocking the boat in a way that's like productive, but if I was to guess, I think, like, just going back to Geiger Capital and how America has always been a bully, and they always kind of reset the rules every 30 to 50 years of the world. I think that Trump's making an attempt to do that. If I was to guess what he wants out of his allies, is he wants us to focus more on productivity and less on like regulations and climate change and all these things like banning plastic straws. Like, I actually think that like the European regulatory framework around like the tech industry and how they've kind of actually tried to like go after tech with the blessing of the Biden administration. I recommend everybody go and watch Mark Andreessen and Lex Friedman. He covers a lot of this stuff really, really thoroughly. But I just think that European regulators, Canadian regulators, the way we've regulated our resources, we've actually increased the cost of not only like our increased the cost on our industry. That means that we're also increasing costs on American and creating a lot of nuance, and like the Europeans are creating a lot of nuisances for American like tech companies and stuff. So I think this is Trump's way of saying, like, I'm going to smack you around. I'm going to ramp it up to 11, and until you guys agree with my agenda, I'm just going to keep doing it. And he is bullying us. He's a bully. He uses kind of like salesman tactics, and that's just Trump's thing. This is very much the art of the deal. But I do think that, like, if Trump could actually wake us up and get us out of this like post 2008 sleep that we've had in our economy since the financial crisis, and like we actually focus on productivity across the Western world, it will benefit the United States and it'll benefit us. So I really hope we wake up and we don't just take the bait to the point where we're going to just put on retaliatory tariffs and go through weeks to years of turmoil. I don't think that's going to happen. That's not really my expectation. And then, and I'm also kind of interested in some of the policy experiments. Like, if Trump does renegotiate NAFTA and opens up for like replacing some income tax with like a VAT, some kind of like export related VAT on selected items, I'm kind of curious to see what that can do, what kind of productivity and positivity that can bring for both the U.S. economy. If it works in the U.S., this kind of taxation strategy might actually work in other countries. So I'm interested. It has to be revenue neutral for it to be like good for the economy. You can't just increase tariffs and not decrease income taxes. If you do that, Tristan's right, that will just increase the cost for American consumers. So if you're going to increase the cost of American consumers, they have to save somewhere else. So I'm just interested in that policy, just kind of nerding out and seeing if that actually if we actually do see a major change in tax regimes around the world. But most importantly, he's ramping it up to 11. So we'll see what he does at the end of this month. I'm very entertained. And in terms of the Bitcoin news, I think that for the most part, it's a good setup. I don't like the Ripple having a seat at the table. I just don't see the point of that. I don't really care much about. I care a little bit about stable coins. I don't care much about shit coins, and I just don't. I think that meme coin thing is just kind of annoying at this point, and I'm kind of a Bitcoin maximalist. At the same time, I'm open competition. Yeah, let's compete with all the coins. Let's do it. I don't care. It doesn't scare me. I don't think we're gonna lose or anything. But yeah, it's just a little annoying. It's a distraction. But I think that we've got a good setup, like compared to the last administration where we basically had a soft ban on Bitcoin. Now we don't. I mean, Trump has made it clear he wants a strategic reserve. A lot of state governments in the United States have followed suit, and they've already announced that they're working on their own state strategic reserves, which I think is amazing, because I think that's actually more bullish than the national strategic reserve in the near term, because it might take like an act of Congress, and it might take a while to convince Congress to do a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But if the state governments start doing it now, that's really bullish for us because we hold Bitcoin. I also think it's really bullish that they're looking into letting banks custody Bitcoin. That is something that can actually come online quicker than the strategic Bitcoin reserve. It could be a lot less controversial to pass it through the Senate. I'm bullish that Michael Saylor and guys like that are showing, and David Bailey are showing up to the parties, because that means they've got the ear of Trump. So I just think the regulatory landscape is a lot more clear, and I think good times are coming for Bitcoin. It's just, but there is this administrative stuff that has to happen before the U.S. can actually start buying. On terms of the state governments, I'm very disappointed as a Canadian that we, being such an energy-rich country in many different ways, we're not just rich in fossil fuels, we're rich in hydro, or we've got a lot of energy pumping in Canada. We got a nuclear power plants in Ontario that have so much energy that we pay the Americans to take our energy off our hands. So like we could just be mining Bitcoin and making our provinces richer. Like a lot of the funding issues around provinces could actually be solved through Bitcoin solutions and Bitcoin strategic reserves. So as a Canadian, I'm just very disappointed that we're probably going to wait years before we have this conversation. And I'm very jealous that we are not having this conversation around Bitcoin in Canada.
Talk about Canada. I'm just going to move on to our final two segments, just for the sake of time. Talk about Canada. The last part of our show is reserved exclusively for Canadian news. So let's move north of the border now, back home, to what's going on here. And what's going on here is also kind of a mess, to be quite honest. So as you guys know, Parliament is prorogued, meaning that it's on break or just suspended until the end of March. And in the meantime, the Liberals are having a leadership race because Trudeau's resigned, but he's not really resigned. He's still there until March 9th, until the Liberal Party could select a replacement. Is probably going to be Mark Carney, and we'll talk about him later on in this show as well. But yeah, if it's going to be Carney, he's going to come in, and then we don't know what he's going to do, and he's going to be automatically prime minister without winning a general election just because he will become the leader of the Liberal Party. So there's a little bit of pushback on that as well, because many Canadians, like probably everyone in this room and a lot of other people in my life, family, friends, are probably not going to be too happy about having just kind of an unelected prime minister being in charge, even for like a few weeks. But it is what it is. So we'll have to see what that happens, right? What happens going forward. But before that all happens, we got to talk about what the Liberal Party is kind of doing, because they're kind of rudderless at the moment, and they're just dedicating all their energy to pushing back and attacking Pierre Poilievre, who is still, despite a recent surge in the polls for the Liberals, Pierre Poilievre of the Conservatives is still leading in overall aggregate polls. And I just saw this post from the Liberal Party recently that I wanted to kind of maybe talk about with you guys on how I think that the Liberal Party is just completely lost. Of course, this is a biased position, but I just think that the Liberal Party is completely lost, and they've lost the plot. And it would be a shame if they like somehow squeak by another 4 years after an election, because I just think that they're going to take the country in the wrong direction just based upon the shit that they post on X, right? So let me share an example of what they're posting. So this post is about a Pierre speech. Pierre Poilievre made a speech that said Canada first, right? So he mentioned the words Canada first, and then this is kind of like the new slogan, actually, of the Conservative Party, Canada first. And the Liberal Party is kind of slamming him on this. So this post says perhaps Pierre Poilievre should rethink his latest slogan. And they posted this kind of opinion paragraph from probably some super alt-left leaning reporter that says, oh, one, Proud Boys chapter. Proud Boys is an alt-right nationalist group based in Hamilton, is now using the name Canada First and shares blatantly pro-Nazi material on Telegram, according to Peter Smith, a reporter and researcher with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. So they're trying to imply that Pierre is, alt-right, ultra-nationalist for saying Canada first. And if you just dig a little deeper into this story, you'll find that there is actually another prime minister, a former prime minister, that used the phrase Canada first. So this phrase was used by Wilfrid Laurier. And guess what party Wilfrid Laurier is from? He's from the Liberal Party. He's perhaps the most famous prime minister the Liberals have ever had. And he's on our money, right? So he's on the 5 right now. So Wilfrid Laurier made a speech where he referenced this. So he said, during one sentence of this speech, he concluded his speech by saying, and let your motto be Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. So this is what Pierre is channeling. And it's just completely bizarre and sad to me that the Liberal Party, whoever runs the Liberal Party X account, does not know their own history enough to know that this was a speech that was from their most famous prime minister, from their own, one of the most famous prime ministers in Canadian history in general, and probably the most famous prime minister from their own party. So that's all I had to say on this. So there is a second part to this story, more about Canadian politics, but I'm going to take a break here and just get what you guys' thoughts on kind of this post by the Liberal Party. Do you agree with me that they're totally off base and they're totally lost? Or do you have a different opinion? What's your opinion on the Liberal Party in general? Do you think that, they're kind of leaderless and rudderless? Or do you think that, Mark Carney is going to come in and save the party or whatever? So just not really a specific direction, but you guys can take it any kind of direction you like with this segment of the story.
Maybe it's just like a matter of vote grabbing, I suppose. They're trying to like nitpick on anything they possibly can, wherever they can and however they can. This all in all is probably taken a little out of proportion, and I felt like the person responsible for kind of making this article, or like on the liberal end of things, probably should have done a little more research, considering Wilfrid Laurier is, as you said, one of the most premier and famous prime ministers in all of Canadian history in the Liberal Party. So with that being said, maybe they probably should have, dug into the history books at the local library, or like did a little Google search and just try to see things through before,
dug into their own history books.
Yeah, right.
The ironic part. That is their own Liberal Party history. And it's like one of the most important chapters in the Liberal Party's history, which was Wilfrid Laurier's tenure as prime minister.
I bet like the Liberal office probably has like handbooks. I bet there's no way they went of like Wilfrid Laurier and like quotes, history, etc. So like you wouldn't think to pick up a book or anything like that at some point. I guess it's a bit ridiculous. They probably should have done their more due diligence a lot better, but it is what it is. And I think this is just completely taken out of court. It's like on the caveat, like not to be super biased, it's like how Pierre kind of nitpicks the carbon tax. He takes it way out of proportion too. It's just political ploy. It is what it is. So, although I'm not a huge fan of carbon, but I'll leave it at that. Never mind.
I think that the liberals are being kind of cringe, because everyone, if you look back in history, everyone has said everything at some point. I'm sure you could find an instance of basically everyone you dislike saying something that could be then turned into a slogan that someone else is now claiming. People aren't that original. I'm like, so really, you're just going to go, it's clear sign of the Proud Boys support from Pierre. It's like, come on. The odds that Pierre is like rolling out of bed being like, gotta check on what the Proud Boys are saying today is basically nothing. Like, come on. It's just like he's not doing that. Like, and to act like he is just extremely cringe. Like, can we not just have an agreement that you know, our politicians, or the people who are going to elect as potential prime minister and stuff, we give them the benefit of the doubt that they aren't just like, grabbing slogans from the local garbage disposal of people. Like, come on, it's just ridiculous to act like this is somewhere Pierre is getting from, and also to act like Pierre should change his slogan just because a bunch of cringe people have decided that that's their slogan too. Like, okay, how do I stop Pierre from saying anything? I just become really cringe and I say it myself. Haha, now he can't say anything. It's just extremely, it's ridiculous. I don't think that I don't think that really gives them much. I think this is just another example of the Liberals tending to really hammer in on something that doesn't matter, no one cares about, and is not going to result in any difference in an election. Like, I don't think that this Proud Boys saying Canada first and Pierre saying Canada first is going to result in a single person choosing not to vote for Pierre. Not even one. Like, come on. So it's just acting like it will is just ridiculous. On regards to the Liberals and Mark Carney, their newfound savior, I think that Mark will probably give a better run for his money than Trudeau would. Give Pierre a better run for his money, because Mark at least is moderately compelling, because Mark does come in with credentials rather than a clearly proven track record of failure over the last 10 years. It's like Mark can at least, be like, but that wasn't us. It wasn't me. It was that other guy, the Trudeau. It was him. It was that guy. It wasn't me. I was busy making the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England amazing. So I just think it's, I think that he'll have a better run than Trudeau would have, but I think that he's on the clock, because I think it's going to become really clear really quickly that he isn't significantly different from Trudeau, because either he was advising Trudeau and Trudeau's ideas were Mark's ideas, or Mark has had no impact on the Canadian economy so far, and in which case, what the hell was he doing? Right? So it's like, I don't see how this will, in the long run, be a significant change. So I don't think that most people are going to buy into the Mark view over the Pierre view, because I also think that part of that is just that I think people are a little bit done with the Liberals. I don't think this is just a Trudeau factor. It was just that Trudeau was the quintessential Liberal of the leader. So I understand that they were a lot of, F Trudeau signs going around, but I'm pretty sure the main sentiment is actually more like F the Liberals. That like, I think that zeroing in on Trudeau was a way to kind of, not be saying F the Liberals, if that makes sense. Like, you might not like the Trudeau Liberals, but in the past you might have liked the Liberals, or you might like some of their policies, but you don't like Trudeau. So you could get away with like being like F Trudeau, but it wasn't F the Liberals. But I think the actual sentiment in most people's mind is like, the Liberals have done a bad job for multiple years. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm going to vote for the Conservatives. And, maybe they'll do a good job, maybe they'll do a bad job, but, that's what we Canadians do. We pick between the red and the blue, and the red's been in too long and things are bad, so let's pick the blue. And I think that's really what's going to happen in the election.
I mean, to an extent, that's basically America as well, to an even larger extent, right? Yeah, I have some thoughts, but I'll save that for last. And I know, Sunil, you're dying to speak, so I'll pass the mic to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I just think the Liberals, like usual, like which they have been under Trudeau, are just focused on labels, culture wars, and just like these purity tests. Just they're doing the same thing. It's the same kind of playbook that the Democrats are doing. They're just like focusing on the things that alienated voters like me. They made people like me turn off from them. They're doing the exact same thing here in Canada. And they're also like, they broadcasted like a year ago that their big game plan was that when Trump was running and the election happened, and if Trump won, they were going to use it kind of as a wedge issue by trying to point Pierre Poilievre as like another Trump, which doesn't work because Pierre Poilievre is nothing like Trump. He's a completely unique individual. So I just think that they're just doubling down on a strategy that people already hate them for. Like people already hate all these labels and oh, he said this, she said this, like that kind of stuff. So it's just gonna backfire. I mean, it might work for the time being because people are emotional about the tariff issue, but this is gonna over time just backfire. In terms of Mark Carney, yeah, I guess there's gonna be a little bit of a bump because he's the new guy and he's not Trudeau, so he has been able to paint himself as an outsider at the beginning, but like he's not an outsider. Everybody knows he's been advising, but not everyone, but it's well known that he's been advising Trudeau for a while, and I think he's probably just stealing some votes from the NDP, and he's getting a bit of that new guy bump. But I don't see the Conservatives really dropping below the low 40s, and that's enough for them to get a majority. So I just don't think it's going to move the needle. But I understand why the Liberals want to try.
I guess I'll add my thoughts and then we can move on to the last part of the story. So, yeah, my thoughts on the Canada First thing, I totally agree with pretty much what everyone else said here, that this like is a totally weird and like random way to go after Pierre, that it's totally not going to work. And it just goes to highlight how out of touch the Liberal Party is, or at least who's ever running the Liberal Party's official X account, which I think it's fair to say that that person speaks for the Liberal Party as a whole because they're running the official Liberal Party account, right? So I just think that it's really, it's not going to work, right? Like Canada First is such a, I don't want to say generic phrase, but it's the generic enough such that you can say it without being an alt-right person. Like, I'm not sure if the Liberal Party knows that. Like, a lot of people would agree with this Canada First agenda who are not alt-right fascists, who are not part of the Proud Boys or whatever. So, yeah, it's just kind of weird. And I bring this story up partly also because I don't have like an example, but I've seen interviews in the past where the reporters would ask the Liberal MPs, like, what are their kind of goals that they want to achieve? Why are they running to be an MP? And the Liberal Party MPs, a lot of them are like, oh, we're running to stop Pierre Poilievre's Make Canada Great Again campaign. And first of all, it's like, okay, Pierre, like that's an allusion to Trump's Make America Great Again, right? First of all, Pierre never ran on the slogan Make Canada Great Again. I've never heard him actually say those exact words. And even if he did, they're implying, the Liberal MPs, they're basically implying that they don't want to make Canada great again, right? Like it's such a weird thing that we're running to be part of your government, and hopefully we can get in charge for a big majority government again, so that we can prevent someone from making Canada great again. And that's just like, I know the illusion is like, you know, Pierre is Trump and we don't want that in Canada. I know what they're trying to say, but on the surface level, it just seems so odd that they think that would be an appealing message, that we're running so that we can prevent Canada from being made great again. It's basically what they're saying, right? It is ridiculous. And I just think that, yeah, this is another example of how out of touch the Liberal Party is, that they think that Canada First is a Proud Boys slogan, even though it was first uttered by their most famous Prime Minister, Wilfrid Laurier, who's from their own party. Now, with regards to Mark Carney, yeah, I mean, he's been the chief economic advisor. I don't know how like official that role is, but he's been in the ear of Trudeau for years, right? At this point, and I just like everything that he's saying that he's gonna do once he's prime minister, he had an opportunity to do. Like, he was very deeply connected with not only Justin Trudeau, but the entire Liberal Party. That's why the entire cabinet of Justin Trudeau basically endorsed him. And it's like, whatever he wants to get done, you can ask, why didn't you do it before, when you had an opportunity for the past like 4 or 5 years since you were involved in government? And I don't think he can really give a good answer to that question, because again, he's had his opportunity, and look where we ended up, right? And he's just kind of running on this idea that I'm an outsider. I wasn't involved. I wasn't the prime minister. I might have been involved in the government and been Trudeau's advisor, but I wasn't, the final say on decisions. So I predict that a lot of that is gonna be going on, and maybe some people will be convinced by that, but I just don't know if a large portion, if enough people, will be convinced by that argument, which is kind of a weak argument in my opinion, that it's going to cause the Liberals to really win the next election. But looking at the polls, though, here's a poll from 338 Canada. They are making a surge, and this is an aggregate of a bunch of polls. So this like eliminates part of the effect of outliers. So I know we talked about echoes in a previous episode, where it was a kind of a standout poll showing that the Liberals are surging really wildly in support compared to a lot of other polls. But now we're seeing like less of a crazy surge that Echoes projected, but it is definitely kind of statistically significant that the Liberals are making a small surge in the aggregate of polls. So, maybe like this is, again, we alluded to this earlier, this is just maybe people who are like super against Trudeau, who are going to vote for other parties kind of coming back now that Trudeau is gone. Maybe it's less so that they like Mark Carney in particular, and more so that they didn't like Trudeau and now there's no more Trudeau. But the last part of this story I just wanted to dedicate to kind of the age divide in Canada. So I know we talked about this way back in the day, maybe like half a year ago or a year ago, in an episode a long time ago, about how the older people, like older folks in Canada, actually vote Liberal more often. And it's the younger people that vote conservative, or at least that's been the trend for the past few years. I don't know how long this trend's been enacted, actually. Maybe it hasn't been that long, but it's just, at least according to the data now, I have this data from 338 Canada, which I think came from Palace Data. And Palace is saying that among 18 to 34-year-old Canadians, the Conservatives are polling at 45%. And the Liberals are polling at 21%, and the NDP is polling at 20%. So if you add together both the major two left-leaning parties, Liberals and NDP, it's still less than the people who are supportive of the Conservatives among 18 to 34-year-olds in Canada. But if you go to the 65-year-old plus, so the seniors, you see a totally different story, where the Liberals are polling at 48% among people age 65 and above, versus the Conservatives at 31%. So my kind of final little bit of the story tonight is, why do you think that is the case, right? And there's some anecdotal evidence to support this trend as well. So I took a screenshot from Mark Carney's official X account, where he bragged about having a packed room in Regina, Saskatchewan, I think this was, where he got like a warm reception from a packed room full of people that are promising to support him and vote for him and all this stuff. And yeah, I pulled this screenshot. This is not photoshopped in any way. I've not made any edits. This is Mark Carney. Mark Carney posted this himself. If you look at around this room, there's maybe like the Asian guy in the back. That's the only guy that I see that could be under the age of like 45. Like, if you just look at everyone else, I don't think there's like a single other person that's really under the age of 40 or 45 in this photo. So this is, again, anecdotal, but this is very like supportive of the Palace data. And because I've seen pictures from Pierre Poilievre's rallies, and they're full of young people, right? Again, like maybe it's just luck, maybe it's anecdotal, but it just seems like to me that the liberal parties become the party of old people, and which is the opposite of what you would expect, right? You would expect left-leaning progressive parties to be more supported among younger people because that's just the general trend everywhere else in the Western world. But why is Canada so different? So this is kind of the last thing that I wanted to talk about today. What do you think is going on among the kind of age divide among supporters of, left versus right, liberal versus conservative in Canada?
Yeah, no, I'll give a snap at it, so to speak, whatever. I think it's just a matter of daily affordability. This is just like a theory. I feel like I could be right or wrong, but this is how I think and interpret the situation. Elder people and older people are from different generations, that being like Gen X, Boomer, etc., so on and so forth. And they most likely have worked for a very long time. They have multiple amounts of assets. They have a lot of money in like different asset classes, have high net worths. They don't really have to worry about a lot of things financially. And with that being the case, I guess they have time to worry about progressive issues. And since they have the time and they don't have to worry about money, it's like a liberal direction for like a lot of the majority of them. This is just theory. And then meanwhile, us younger people, a lot of us are probably still at home renting or can't even afford to buy a house, entering the workforce, struggling to find a job, high grocery prices, so on and so forth. So I think in a sense, like Pierre is promising to like negate those issues. So people would probably want to vote in a conservative aspect. But if you're someone who's older who has quite a bit of money already, there's more leniency around stuff like that in terms of daily cost of living. So this is probably one of the reasons as to why this sort of divide is happening. Just a theory. Factual, I'm not sure, but just a kind of a spiff out there.
With regards to the age difference, I suspect that it is more so that a lot of the people who have voted liberal in the past are kind of sticking with the liberals, whereas the younger folks, I feel like, are more frustrated than they have been in the past. It's no longer been kind of the same, the previous scenario where I think like in like the mid to late 2000s, where if you were a young person, things were relatively all right. I would say, like, people seem to be able to afford housing for the most part. People were able to, get schooling and everything. Whereas I feel like the last 10 years, the people who've been, becoming adults during that time frame tend to be a lot more jaded because of the fact that they are looking at things and going, oh, so I'll just never own a house ever. There's just no way. And so they are naturally being encouraged to consider the alternative. And since there's functionally only two parties in Canada, whether you like the NDP or not, the Liberals and the Conservatives are really the main ones. People are going to be going to be more inclined to vote for the conservatives over the liberals when they're younger, because they've seen the last 10 years or so of the liberal leadership and gone basically, wow, this is kind of not very good, and you know, I am worse off because of this, and so I will be inclined to support the other side, because at the end of the day, things looked like they were better under them, right? Because if you look at like housing when Stephen Harper was in charge versus housing with Justin Trudeau, you can clearly see where one was more affordable than the other. Where, you know, regardless of how good a job you thought Stephen Harper was doing, I would say you can pretty consistently be like, housing and incomes, we just take those, we look at it, and we can just do the math. It was easier to afford a house then. So I would say that's a contributing factor, is just that the state of the country for the young people who are becoming adults now is very different from, you know, even a few years ago, where I think it made a lot more sense to feel like you would wanted to support the more left-leaning parties, because, you know, socially you'd be more inclined to agree with them, right? Because I think that, you know, the most Canadians they don't care about gay marriage or anything like that. They're just like, whatever, you know, cool, let the gays can marry, that's great, I don't care, right? And that was kind of more so like the kind of inclusivity and stuff, and like people were pretty pro-immigration and everything. So I think most people were pretty on board with the more social aspects of the Liberal Party. And then the young people now are really, really unhappy with the economic side of the Liberals. So I think that's really where this divide is coming from with that. And I guess with the older folks, it's more that the Liberals were maybe working better for them back in the past, and they don't need to worry so much about that. As Dom was kind of saying, they don't need to worry so much about the financial issues, because they aren't nearly as inhibited by the financial issues as well. You know, if you are someone who bought a house for $100,000 that's now worth $1.5 million, maybe you want to keep the gravy train going. And if the Conservatives do something that may increase housing availability, and, you know, you're older and you want to be able to sell your nest egg at some point and have move somewhere else. Well, if your nest egg is getting reduced because of the Conservatives increasing housing or anything, then maybe that seems like it would be a negative for you. So I'm just speculating. I don't have the exact reasons, but these are some potential causes for this divide.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I agree. I mean, I think that the main issue here is the economic angle, and that's clear. Like, younger people just younger people have been hurt more by this government than older people have, because older people might be in a more protected situation. They already have their house paid for, they have assets, they have a pension. I think there's also just, like, philosophically things are changing. Like, I do think that post-war welfare state mentality I'm not saying that, like, welfare states and government services are going to go away, but the way we structured our societies in the post-war era these ideas are starting to die. Like, I think that we went through a period of time where leftist governments in the center-left governments in the Western world went off the principle of fixed government but making it bigger, and that became, like, very prominent in 2020 when they were able to expand budgets. The central banks gave them permission, and they all just, like, went crazy, and the gravy train actually got ramped up. And I think that philosophically, boomers they want that world that they grew up saving for, the world that they contributed to, the world that they contributed to their pensions, they contributed to their healthcare plans, they expect to get those benefits. And they hear guys like Javier Milei and people like Trump kind of changing the script really quickly, and it's scary. because I think that these trends that are happening around the world are happening here too. It's happening in Europe. You're actually seeing riots in Europe, and I just think that young people have buyer's remorse and they have a lack of opportunity, and they feel like they just feel like things aren't going well. And I think that we're living in an era where the younger you are as a voter, the less likely you benefited from this like large institutional structure that governs our society and governs our like entitlement systems and everything. So I think the young people are just more likely. What happened in Argentina, which is a greater, they're suffering from greater economic issues than we are. I'm not trying to make a direct comparison, but the trends are the same. The younger people in Argentina were like, screw this Peronist nonsense that's been like running our country for the last 50 years. It's ruined an entire generation. And I think that's happening in the West. I think that's happening in places like Canada too. And I think people are just like, screw it. I don't want this anymore. Like, I hate this system. I hate how high my taxes are. Regulations are becoming more suffocating. Governments are talking about taking away our ability to like freely discuss topics online. They might word it in a nicer way, but there's just like this like regime that this like center left like international policy regime that is very international and not localized. That's very suffocating, and it's really impacting people's lives very negatively. In the bonus episode from a couple of weeks ago, I invoked the World Economic Forum, but I just think that's an example of international like progressivism that actually has a lot of control over our local our local decisions. And there's many other examples of international extra-governmental groups that have a lot of control over the policies that take place in individual countries. And I just think that it's more likely that if you're younger, you have buyer's remorse. Even if you enthusiastically supported Trudeau 8 years ago or 9 years ago, you probably have buyer's remorse because you're feeling it. The younger you are, more likely you're feeling it financially.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that because I think you all just said everything that I wanted to say. And we're also out of time. So if you guys don't have anything else you want to add, why don't we try to wrap it up right now? Maybe one last point. There is, for those of you who live in Ontario or have Ontario registration, like driver's license and whatnot, there is an election that is happening in Ontario for the provincial, provincial elections, which is happening on February 27th, which if you can vote, always vote. I always encourage everyone. I'm going to vote in the advanced polls, so as soon as possible. Not gonna, go into who I'm voting for and all that. I think you guys can probably draw some conclusions by yourself. I'm not gonna state that clearly, but yeah, and I'm not gonna like trying to shill for any particular political party. I just encourage everybody to vote for whoever you want. And as I always say, I think that we should trust the voter, right? Like, people are generally smart about which party has their best interests in mind, even if you don't agree with 100% with any of the parties. I think that when people get into the voting booth, they know what's good, right? I don't know how else to put it. So, let's see how this Ontario provincial election turns out, and we'll talk about it in a future episode after the results come out. But if you guys have nothing else to add, let's end the episode now. So I'll pass it off to Dom for a brief outro.
Alrighty, cool. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. We all did for sure. Season 2 is here and alive and well and going. So with that being said, again, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and peace out.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.